In a world gone mad, only rationality and common sense can save it. It's Andrew and Jerry Save the World with your hosts, Andrew Langer and Jerry Rogers. And now, here's Andrew and Jerry.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Andrew and Jerry Save the World. This is episode 26. Andrew and Jerry Celebrate America. We're recording this on July 1st. Rabbit, by the way. I almost never get a chance to say that because we very rarely record on the first day of the month. But we are on the I was going to say, Jerry, on the verge of the 4th of July weekend, Independence Day weekend. It's a 3-day weekend for lots of people except for me. I will be because I'm on WMAL on Monday morning, Jerry, bright and early.
Yes, indeed.
And you're on Sunday. Or are they doing some kind of special for you?
I am on Sunday.
Okay, so you're done 3-day weekend for neither of us, really.
Right.
Right. So yeah. But yeah, we lots to talk about. All sorts of great stuff happened this week. Though, what did you? As we were talking, Jerry, what did you point out that to the other side?
It's amazing to me. Senators, Democratic pundits, political celebrities, members of Congress, the President of the United States, literally are using language to destabilize the courts, delegitimize the court. You know, it smacks of 2016.
Oh, yes.
They did not like
2000, frankly. It smacks
of
2000. Yeah.
They did not like the presidential outcome. So therefore, everything around it was not legitimate. And they're doing it again with the court.
Oh, yeah. Well, and here's the bottom line. I know we're not so worried. We have a segment called The Bottom Line. I'm going to bottom line something about this very early on in the show. With the exception of the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association decision, which has to do with the Second Amendment, something that is actually expressly enumerated in the Constitution, every one of the decisions that conservatives is applauding is rooted in returning the power of an unelected bureaucracy or of the courts, returning it either to state legislatures or to the federal legislature, the Congress. And so all of these, I mean, all of them, right? I mean, not the Kennedy versus Bremerton. I mean, that's really about religious freedom, but the Dobbs decision. Sorry,
but even on the Kennedy decision, the prayer decision, when one side has to promote falsehood,
yes,
you know there's a problem with their argument. Their argument is most likely indefensible. The Kennedy prayer decision did not rewrite the First Amendment. I saw Senator what's his name from Connecticut, Murphy?
Yeah,
is it Murphy?
Yeah,
Chris Murphy from Connecticut tweeted out today that in the past session, the courts rewrote the First Amendment, rewrote the Second Amendment, gutted all climate change protections, and robbed from women their health. I also saw one very popular Democratic member of the mainstream media say that the EPA decision will cause cancer and respiratory illness.
Right. Yes, of course.
That we are on the edge of Armageddon.
Well, listen, I want to get into the specifics on that in a moment. I actually, we will get into specifics on that in a moment because I don't want to go to rip from the headlines quite yet, because I do want to talk about two things that I absolutely hate on Twitter, sort of as an introduction, because I meant to bring this up. I'm on Twitter more than Jerry is, though Jerry is getting more engaged on Twitter.
I can't get my members up. Listen, go to @Jerry Rogers Show and please follow me. It's pathetic, Andrew. I have 534 followers.
Nothing wrong with that. It's the quality of the followers that counts, Jerry. I have thousands of followers, and anyway. But my two things that I hate on Twitter. Number one, I hate when someone responds to something in one of my tweets, and then somebody else responds to that person, and it goes off on a massive thread in which I'm still included in it, and I haven't said
yes. There should be a mechanism to get rid of that.
I hate that. And then I got into it with I'm not gonna mention his name, a political science professor from Baltimore who I've had some pleasant interactions with in the past. I've had some not so pleasant interactions with in the past. Very pleasant when we talk about small business and entrepreneurship. And regulation. Other than that, no. What I hate is when someone throws up their hands and says, well, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. Like I will frequently say in a thread, if there's no point in discussing it anymore, I will frequently say, you are welcome to have the last word. It seems like that is important to you, because for a lot of people, having that last word is very important. The counterpoint is when someone says, I'm done here, there's no point in talking with you about this anymore, blah, 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 blah. And then they'll come back like an hour later or 2 hours later and say something in the thread, right? It's like one of these things where they think they've come up with a perfect retort on something that I hate. And that happened with this guy. He would not answer my questions talking about this Kennedy versus Bremerton case. And I was trying to get, wrap my head around, because this guy is a progressive. He's a proud progressive. And I was trying to wrap my head around very specifically. He had a very angry reaction to this. And now we'll go to the Ripped from the Headlines segment. Let's go, ladies and gentlemen, to Ripped from the Headlines.
Ripped from the Headlines.
So this Kennedy versus Bremerton decision, this is the religious freedom that Coach Kennedy was fired improperly from the Bremerton School District, over his wanting to, after a game, stand in the 50-yard line and conduct a silent prayer. And folks would gather around him, and he made it really clear no one was being forced to do this. If you wanted to come and join me, come and join me. He did make a very public display of this, and that's his right to do it. He said, I'm going to go pray, and if you want to join me, join me. And this political science professor was very adamant that he has every right to go and pray privately in his car. Well, sure he does. He also has the right to pray in a public space. And I pointed out that there are many instances in which people pray in public and in public spaces, whether it's Confucianists in parks in San Francisco.
Right. That's right.
Yeah. Or frankly, whoever in Washington, D.C. But I asked him because I really wanted to know, again, right, Jerry, what do we talk about? We want to be persuaded as well as being persuadable, right?
Sure.
You have to be open to that. So I tried to get at, why is it so important to you? What do you think is going to happen? What do you think? What do you think the downside to him praying in the middle of the football field is? Somebody else popped in and said, that's not the right question. I'm like, you don't understand. I know this person. I'm asking this person specifically.
But why wouldn't that be the right question?
Because the question, he was focusing on the law and the decision and the issue of the Establishment Clause and the Lemon Test. It was someone who had sort of popped into a conversation and didn't know the 50 tweets beforehand.
Yeah. I get it.
And the preceding things. And so I never got an answer. I mean, I never got an answer. He claimed that he answered the question several times. He never did. But this is part of the problem. And I don't understand. I mean, I kind of understand the idea of, if he was an authority figure, and if the prayers were in essence compulsory, right? You get this.
I don't. Okay. I don't see why a person of authority, even a person of authority, couldn't pray publicly in a public school. It's ridiculous.
All right.
The idea that you give up your First Amendment right when you enter a public school is ridiculous.
You're missing my point, Jerry. It's this idea of like, let's say that he made playing time contingent upon your participation in the prayer. That would be a problem, right?
Sure.
Okay. All right. I mean, so I understand that, but there was never any allegation of this. And we all would agree that anything where there's an adult who creates a coercive situation for a student in terms of whether it's getting better grades or whether it's getting playtime or whether it's getting first chair and
whatever it might be.
Yeah. That's wrong, right? That's an abuse of power. But that is not the issue here. And so, but this gets into this, everything about this, every single decision that has been made by this court has been misinterpreted by the left in some way, shape, or form. Right?
On purpose. It's purposeful. Yeah. This decision, this prayer decision, is limited. It's discrete. It doesn't rewrite the First Amendment. It doesn't allow for the establishment of religion. And also, I want to say this because just to broaden it out, the bottom line, or from the headlines, the fact of the matter is that every time I hear a leftist or a member of Congress say the wall of separation, they have no idea what they're talking about. I mean, they literally have no idea.
They have no idea that when Jefferson wrote the letter to the Danbury Church, he
Right.
had literally just come from a religious service in the United States Capitol.
Yes. And again, remember this letter,
Yeah.
his point in the letter was Congress could not establish a religion, but the state of Connecticut very well could.
Well, and
At the time, sure.
that's an interesting thought. I actually hadn't thought of that there could be an official church of the state of Connecticut.
Yes, there could have been.
Jerry, I think it's time that you and I start the official church of the state of Maryland.
But however, what happened later, though, of course, with the Civil War amendments,
yes, of course, the 14th Amendment. Yeah, yes.
So it changes things. But my point is that, and again, I've had members of the media on WBAL or with me and some other contacts, and they'll say wall of separation, and I'll say, where is that in the Constitution? Oh, well, it's in the preamble, or no, it's in the First Amendment itself. No, it's not.
No. They, and that's part of it, right? Is that again, this gets down to everybody thinks that they're an expert in everything. It's funny. I actually want to pull something else up because I think you and I have talked about this. There's a guy named Tom Nichols. Now, I've spent some time talking about it.
I know who Tom Nichols is. Yes.
Tom Nichols.
Tell for our audience, though.
And so Tom Nichols, he is an international relations expert, legitimate. He taught at the Naval War College. I'm not sure he still teaches there. He's got a sinecure with the Atlantic, so he writes a newsletter for the Atlantic. He was at the Heritage Foundation, strangely enough, at one point in time, but he's sort of had this journey over time. But Tom Nichols wrote a book a few years ago about the death of expertise and about people sort of getting outside of their lane in terms of talking about things in which they are not experts and speaking with authority. And so there was no small amount of irony to watch Tom Nichols start pontificating about the Constitution earlier this week. Things, again, that he knows nothing about or very little about. Or, maybe he knows more than the average person, but he certainly is not a constitutional expert by any means.
However, with that being said, I think citizens should make themselves constitutional experts. I think that we have an obligation.
Don't get me wrong. Stop for a second. I agree with you. My point is, someone who writes a book bemoaning this and sort of setting himself up as only experts can talk about things should then take their own advice to heart and not go outside their lane. That doesn't mean the rest of us. Listen, we all know. We want people to have these discussions. That's the beauty of the Constitution. It's beauty, by the way, the things that we're celebrating about America is that people are engaged and they are informed, and they have a right to speak on these things, and they should speak on. Listen, hold on. I want to, because we're going to get back to this, because we're going to talk at some point about this EPA, West Virginia versus EPA decision and the issue of regulation. A lot of folks don't know. Yes, these unelected bureaucrats have to have their power reined in, but anybody can voice their opinion on these regulatory issues. It's one of the great beauties of this. And if you say something, Jerry, let me take 10 seconds and give you an example. There was a rule that was going through the EPA during the Bush administration called the off-road diesel rule. And they wanted to get at the emissions coming off of farm equipment, tractors, and they were going to mandate that farmers literally attach this kind of black box to their engines of their tractors. And it took some farmer, one person, not an expert in regulation, but an expert in farming, saying to the EPA, hey, you need to explain to me how I'm supposed to put this black box on my tractor engine. How is it actually literally physically going to fit on my tractor engine? This is the beauty of this. I'm sorry, Jerry, go ahead.
No, I was just I had a caller in yesterday at WBAL. I made the case that, for instance, with Dobbs, you hear from President Biden, from myriad members of Congress, from advocates outside, from the media, that Roe v. Wade needs to be codified into the law, that we need a Roe law. And I've been making the case now, and I'm shocked that no Republican, no pro-life advocate, no serious thinker about the Constitution hasn't pushed back on this idea. The Congress has no authority, zero authority to write Roe into law. Remember this.
Absent doing it as a constitutional amendment.
Absent the constitutional amendment process. But there, it's not just Congress, right? It's Congress and the states and the people. But I made this point, and I was very clear. I said, look, this isn't. I agree that we shouldn't do it, but at the same time, I don't think Congress has any authority to ban abortions either.
Yes.
So it cuts both ways. Anyway,
Well,
this caller called in and said Congress can write any law it wants, and that's how you make rights. And I said, no. I said, well, Congress, of course, can write any law it wants, but the court could strike it down.
Right,
and
as it has many times.
Or some member of Congress could do a point of order and say what we're doing here is unconstitutional, which has happened in the past as well, that we have no jurisdiction here. But my point is, I said very clearly to this gentleman, I said, look, I said the 9th and 10th Amendments limit the power of the federal government, limit the power of Congress. In fact, there are 17 discrete powers given to the feds, given to the Congress, having to do with national defense, interstate commerce, the post office, currency, and these sorts of things. And I said, nowhere does the Congress have the authority to create a right. And
except by constitutional amendment.
Except by constitutional amendment. But even there, again, that's not just the Congress, right? The Congress can pass the amendment. Absolutely. And then has to go to the states for ratification.
100%.
So even there, the Congress doesn't have sole authority. So my point is that this is pretty clear and basic to me. I'm shocked. And I said to him, I said to this gentleman.
All right, because I have a question about this.
Yeah.
Because I'm just sort of thinking about precedents here. And honestly, this is not within my wheelhouse, but I know this is more in yours. How did the Defense of Marriage Act work? What did the Defense of Marriage Act do? Right. Sorry, go ahead.
Again, if I remember correctly, but my understanding of the Defense of Marriage Act was that there would be that if one state passed marriage equality, sure, that all the states would have to reciprocate and accept that
and recognize that marriage is valid. But again, that's sort of an interstate. Okay, it's sorry. I know I'm just sort of thinking about these things.
Which again, I don't want to get on the marriage debate, but if you think about it, three individuals living their lives, organizing their lives in the manner in which they want to, that's a matter of contracts and private contracts. Yeah. And the Constitution speaks to that too, in terms of the federal government's role in private contracts. I'm not sure, and this is interesting too with Justice Thomas, when he said that we should reconsider these other decisions. Part of why he said that, if you read his concurring decision or opinion, was that maybe the legal reasoning isn't strong enough, and we need to go back and shore it up. I'm not sure if the Supreme Court case that granted marriage as a constitutional right, I'm not sure if it's on a solid foundation. Now, it doesn't mean I'd want to go backwards, but I just, again, the legal reasoning matters.
I'll say this one last thing. No, hold on. That's an absolute. I don't want to move away from that point, Jerry. Yeah. Because this is the conversation that I had, with a libertarian legal scholar back at CEI, someone who has become a very renowned legal scholar today. And I don't know what his views of the issue are, but I know who you're talking about. But I know we were talking about the issue of choice versus abortion versus life. And he said to me, and now at the time he was a law student, so this was right in his head, and he goes, he says, well, Roe is decided on very shaky grounds. Roe is not the precedent you want if you are pro-choice. And I had him explain that to me. But so that's the point, is that
right.
These are discussed. Go ahead.
And again, just to put Justice Thomas's his writing in proper context, he wasn't saying we should go back and undo these precedents. What he was saying was, like Roe, they might be on shaky ground, yet there still might be a constitutional right in place. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was pro-abortion, said over and over and over again, lectured over and over and over again, that Roe was wrongly decided.
Yeah.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg said that Roe actually set backwards the pro-choice movement.
Yes.
She said that
overreached. Yeah.
Yes, they overreached. And she said that what Ruth Bader Ginsburg, her expectation was that the states would figure this out. and then eventually the so-called right to an abortion or the access to a safe legal abortion would have found consensus and equilibrium. That never happened because Roe intervened.
Yes.
And again, I'm pro-life, so I'm not saying that I would in any way favor abortion. What I'm saying is that we need to have the conversation. Well, and my voice should be heard, and so should others.
And more to the point, right? As we're talking about this, as folks are saying how much this damages democracy and how 9, unelected lifetime.
It's insane.
But again, there are. This is why we have legislatures, and the governmental power, provided that it is founded in the Constitution. I actually, before I get there, Jerry, I want to have a couple of minutes because I want to continue to talk a little bit about this caller. Because I went and just looked up about bigamy and polygamy, and there was the Edmunds Act, right? But that was only, the federal government was ardently against bigamy and polygamy, and their anti-Mormon bias, but that was only in federal territories. They couldn't do anything in the several states.
Exactly. And the same is true for abortion, by the way.
My point,
if the federal government wants to make Washington, D.C. an abortion sanctuary, it can. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, but my point is we're sort of talking about this issue of Congress, granting or taking away rights and the role of the courts, and Congress can pass any law that it wants, right? Congress, for instance, could not pass a law, right? In the wake of of September 11th, 2001, in the wake of that, they could not pass a law banning the practice of Islam in the United States, right?
Of course not. Right.
They could pass the law, but it would be held immediately,
Correct.
almost immediately unconstitutional. By the same token, right? As we have these debates about hate speech, Congress could pass a law declaring Nazism outlawed. But then, again, you have these First Amendment issues. Now, there are ways that the federal executive branch can chip away at these rights, as they do, as we've talked about, all of these rights. And it is a matter of the practice and how they go about implementing. But the point is, in the end, all these decisions, like the Dobbs decision, all they have done is return this power to the states, or in the case of West Virginia versus EPA, return it to the Congress. By the way, I forgot to mention this. We have a guest today. He's going to join us in just a couple of minutes here.
Yeah.
His name is Matt Schlapp. He is the chairman of the American Conservative Union, because we're going to talk to him about these decisions. We're going to talk about the craziness of the left. We're going to celebrate America. Also want to talk to him about the January 6th hearing, which has also gotten everybody kind of spun up here. A couple of minutes, Jerry. What I love were these headlines yesterday. The right-wing Republicans try to undo Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony, which is like she's already doing it to herself. Go ahead.
Well, on the J6 issue, it's funny. The media knows that the Secret Service has completely debunked her testimony. We also know that other aspects of her testimony have proven to be untrue. And if you listen to her language, she uses words like, I was in the vicinity of the conversation, I overheard, I thought I heard this. So therefore, she's safe in terms of giving false testimony. Yes. But I wonder after the testimony was over, she and Liz Cheney embraced in a very familiar hug.
Yes.
I wondered to myself, this woman, Hutchinson, changed lawyers, changed her story. I wonder if she was coached to stay away from a perjury trap.
Wait, what? Oh, I'm sure. Yes. Well, no, that's absolutely true. No, I'd be shocked, Jerry. Shocked to find out that she was coached.
Obviously coached. Yeah. Go ahead. Tell
you what. So we're going to bring on Matt Schlapp in our expert advice segment.
Expert advice.
Well, welcome to our expert advice segment. I'm so excited about the expert we have on today. His name is Matt Schlapp. He is the chairman of the American Conservative Union. He is an old friend. He's also the author. I'm going to pull this up right now here, Matt. He's author of a book called The Desecrators, Defeating the Cancer Culture Mob and Reclaiming One Nation Under God. He wrote it with Dale Hudson, who's also a longtime conservative activist here. I don't think we could have picked a better week to have you on. Not only is it Independence Day on Monday, Matt, but we've had these stunning successes, these great victories in the Supreme Court. Let's talk about this. Out of all of these great decisions this term, any one of which would have been monumental, any one particular standout for you?
You know what's funny? There's so many good ones. I'm like trying to remember. It was like so much good news. I never recall having any good news out of the Supreme Court. So I always found the summer to be depressing because it was like, okay, this Bill of Rights will mean, less. This means less. The court does more. But I guess you got to go with Roe v. Wade first, just because no matter what your position as an abortion, and I'm a 100% pro-life person, but no matter what your position is, it's such a retarded decision. I mean, like nobody can read Roe v. Wade and say, wow, that Harry Blackmun, what a legal scholar. I mean, you can't. Like they made shit up. They tried to act like they were both doctors and psychologists. I mean, it was such an example of like 9 people from the faculty lounge trying to set public policy for people. It's like, they think they're so smart. They look so stupid in the decision. So I think that one's just like been a long time coming. And look, I didn't know if I thought they would do it. Yeah. And my whole life, your whole lives, we've had this dumb decision. And by the way, as pro-life as I am, one of the downsides of the Roe v. Wade decision is that abortion has been at the center of our politics because justices made the decisions instead of voters on an issue that the Constitution is silent on. And, for all these, these Janes and these friends of Ruth and all these, terrorists out there, what they get to be part of this process on the new regulations. Why are the blue people so scared of this going through blue legislatures who will vote to not criminalize abortion? Abortion will probably not even hardly be regulated. Like, why are they whining so much? I think it's because they know that actually, even in blue places, sex selection abortions, partial birth abortions, they're not popular.
Right.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? One of my favorite reactions to all of this was the mayor of Baltimore, Brandon Scott, pledging $600,000 to ensure that abortion access was going to remain for the people of the city of Baltimore. And I'm sitting here going, when was it ever in danger? Right. I mean,
and the thing too about Baltimore City, but about Chicago, about New York, we've seen an unprecedented spike in violence, homicides in these cities. And you'd think these mayors would try to promote a culture of life. And again, I don't think Brandon Scott or these big city Democratic mayors are going to change their tune when it comes to the abortion issue. But at the very least, why promote it? Why celebrate it? What really gets me, and I'm like you, Matt, I'm 100% pro-life. In fact, my wife and I, how we got into politics was through the pro-life movement. My wife, years ago, when we were in her 20s, was the president of the largest pro-life organization in the state of New Jersey. That's how we came to politics. That's why we got involved. So I'm with you 100% pro-life. But at the same time, I understand Ruth Bader Ginsburg herself thought that this was a poorly construed decision, that it should have gone to the states. And so I think the reason why they're so angry over this is because now, to your point, Matt, they have to defend the indefensible.
Yeah, I think that's right. And look, I think I got involved in politics because of the pro-life movement too. In all candor, I was arrested at a protest at an abortion clinic. And, I feel like it's the moral question of our time. Everyone has great moral questions. Our great moral question is, how do we treat the marginalized? And, the left probably does a better job of marketing the fact that they care. But, I look at cities like Baltimore. You bring up Baltimore, we've had abortion on demand, abortion for any reason at all for a full generation or more, maybe a generation and a half. We have spent lavishly on quote unquote, air quotes, caring for people. And it's a hellhole. What did Trump say about some of those cities? I mean, it's sad. It's sad what's happened. They said, well, you have to have abortion because there are just some people that they have desperate circumstances. Well, we've tried all their solutions. And it's not made people happier. It's not brought more human functionality. It's not brought more prosperity. I think it's done the opposite. And I think we should give the other a try for a while.
Yeah.
Maybe some of these kids that would be born in desperate circumstances will change the world. I'm for trying.
Yeah.
That.
You know, a couple of things. And my wife says this all the time. Where there's life, there's always hope. And it drives me crazy that you have serious people, Matt, Andrew, who say they're better off dead. That's their argument.
Did you hear Anna Cardenas? I sad to say she's married to the previous CPAC chairman, Al Cardenas. She went on TV and she said basically that her step grandkids would have maybe been better not to have been allowed to be born because they have a disability. And you hear people say this all the time. It's like, well, who are you to, I have a disabled child, right, and, I might have made a different choice. And you're like, my God, have we gotten to the point where you want to kill your relatives? And by the way, I don't think that's really great for marital harmony. If you say like your step kids or grandkids should be dead. Yeah. I mean, this is the insanity of our time. And that gets passed off as reasonable analysis.
As someone pointed out to me, and I agree with this, that comment from Anna Navarro was, it was that, you had that immediate reaction where she's the grandmother who says the thing in the room that just makes everybody cringe and roll their eyes, and they go, oh, well, that's just, asocial, antisocial grandma talk out there. But, it's worse because she's got these various platforms. Matt, I want to talk about this, though, these kinds of reactions, and not just to the Mississippi, the Dobbs decision, but all of these other decisions, the left is talking about it as the collapse of democracy, when in point of fact, it is returning power to either the state legislatures, as you point out, in the case of West Virginia versus EPA, returning it to Congress itself. I mean, is the left, is this sort of the left's fatal conceit here? They're sort of their over the top reactions.
I think that they are governed by emotion.
Oh yeah.
And I think that they also, it's all propaganda, as all fascists use. Yes. And they really study the language, and they really study how they can trigger people and how they can appeal to them on an emotional level. And I just think we're wired not to be that way. We're wired. I was raised that if you let your emotion get into your thinking too much, you'll make bad decisions. And my mother and my father taught me that. That was just a logical thing. And I guess now that's why we were like a radical conservative household, even though my parents weren't even very political, but they taught you things like that, which as you grow up, you realize, oh, I'm just more aligned with these people who say things like, well, you can't keep spending money you don't have. The left doesn't even think that way. They say, oh my God, this person's in desperate circumstances. How can you be so heartless as to not give them more money?
Print more money to give it to them.
But it's always you give them more of your money.
Yes,
I taught
you're a bad person. Yeah, because you're a bad person because you don't want to be commanded to give money.
Right. When I came out of Fordham, I taught religious education theology at Iona Prep.
Well, you should have been disqualified if you came from Fordham.
I know, but I was educated by the Irish Christian Brothers before the Jesuits.
Okay,
it's funny. Just a point of personal moment here.
Please.
When I interviewed at Iona, the head of the brothers, Brother Repke, said, "Jerry, we're going to hire you, even though you went to Fordham." But let me say this though. One thing I noticed in those early days was with Catholic social teaching, and I taught peace and justice. I had the older the seniors and the juniors, and at that time the church was very much into liberation theology and these sorts of issues. And I remember having a conversation with one of the brothers who I'm still friends with. He was a mentor, Brother Stanicky, and I said to him, I said, doesn't the scripture, doesn't the gospel, doesn't Jesus tell us to give our time, our money, our resources, our love? And what you want me to teach these kids is to lobby their government for someone else to do these things, when it's the church who should be responding and reacting and loving, like welcome the stranger. Yes, I will welcome the stranger, but it doesn't mean that I should petition the government to have open borders. There's a conflation here between doing what's right and good and moral, and then having or forcing others to do it through politics.
And Matt, before you respond to that, I want to add to this because I got into this with somebody. Somebody had tweeted out about the resentment on the part of working class Americans towards the elite college educated Americans. And I pointed out to this person, I can't imagine why they're resentful. You want to force them to give up their hard-earned money to subsidize the college debt choices of college educated Americans. And you're out on the ground, ACU, you guys do CPAC, you guys are out in state legislatures, but you're now doing these regional CPACs. You're out there talking to people. Talk about this issue of being forced to make choices and spend your hard-earned tax dollars for people who are not spendthrifts. How is that playing out in the hinterland?
So I just want to say this. You're right. My wife and I, we campaign pretty much nonstop. Strangely enough, I never would have thought would become my life, but we're out there all the time. She just came back from Arizona. I can't even tell you where we're going next, but I know we're going someplace soon. And you do talk to a lot of people. We had 100 people in our house last night for a fundraiser for this great new candidate who's running for Congress in our district. And, I talked to a lot of these folks, and I feel like we do have our finger on the pulse because that your CPAC is very grassroots. I would say a couple of takeaways. First of all, the first most important thing off of what Jerry said, just to jump into the theology of this very fast, because I don't know how to go anything but fast, and I can't go very deep. So I'm just going to skim on the top here. But the Bible is very clear, and Jesus was very clear that he appears in the person of the humble. So like when you see the homeless person, a real Christian has to look at that person and say, that could be Jesus. He's asking for money. Yeah. And maybe that's Jesus appearing in a form to make me understand that, like, I do have to be generous with the gifts he gives us. The second thing is I've come to realize through, and I chronicle this in the book, and Mercy talks about it, like we had such an economic stumbling, and I felt like such a failure as a father, as you're trying to raise these kids. We have 5 kids. And what the great lesson I learned is in that process is God gives you your money. God takes away your money. God gives you your gifts. He gives you your IQ. Yep. He gives you your speed. He gives you all these things. Yeah. Why doesn't he just make us all like amazingly smart and fast? It's like we're all a mixed bag, and it's all done according to his design and his reason. And you just eventually get to the point where you accept the fact that God gave you certain virtues. He didn't give you other, strengths. And when it comes financially, you're given this as a great responsibility. And by the way, let's take this all the way back to the Supreme Court.
Sure.
These 9 people have a God-given, they all are intelligent, some more than others, but they're all intelligent, and they get the ability to sit on that court. What an amazing thing. And to think that so many Republican appointees have used it as a credentializer to get at the top of the list in Washington, D.C., to get invited to parties and get awards. I remember going to a dinner where Justice Kennedy was given a great humanitarian award for writing the opinion in the gay marriage decision. Okay. And I thought, what kind of courage did it take to write a decision that has nothing to do with the Constitution, by the way, and then be feted and applauded and get every award in town. And then for Brett Kavanaugh to be part of a decision on Dobbs and to almost have an assassin get in his house. I mean, that's courage. What these Republican appointees did for years was the opposite of that.
Listen, I'm going to tell you something, Matt. I mean, this is why, I may disagree with Sonia Sotomayor on just about every issue that's out there and sort of her approach to the court and her reasoning and the Constitution. But, for her to come out and speak so caringly about Justice Thomas in the last week, I mean, that's amazing to me. I mean, that to me, I think takes a certain degree of courage, even if she doesn't show it in her decision making. But because
you know where Sotomayor is from?
No,
she's from the Bronx.
Yes.
My old neighborhood, Matt.
but my point is this: it's just because of what happened in the wake of the Dobbs decision and the angry attacks, right? You have Hillary Clinton going on, what was it, CBS this morning, and saying, well, I've known Justice Thomas since law school, and he's been full of anger and resentment ever since then, which is, how dare you say this? Statements like Sonia Sotomayor is talking about, how Justice Clarence Thomas is joyful and kind, is incredibly helpful. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
Oh, no, I just, so my point is that it takes great courage.
Yeah.
But I think for the people of faith anyway, and maybe it's not just faith, but the people of strong moral character, you just get to the point where you accept your station in life. And I think one of the reasons why Justice Thomas is a real hero of mine is I don't get the impression that he thinks of himself as an important man. I get the impression that he considers himself a child of God who has a certain job to do. He's just going to do it. And you know what I think? I think something else. I think his example on the court is what gave those other justices the courage. And no one will say it because Sam Alito wrote the opinion. He's a great man. But I think Justice Thomas's life and his steadiness and his intellect and his character is the glue that is allowing these younger justices who could really wander and have wandered on issues to stick together on the big ones. I actually am hopeful that we could see a lot of reversals from the Warren and Berger courts.
Sure.
I never would have thought that before, 2 weeks ago.
Something. Hold on, Jerry. This gets into something that Jerry and I talked about with regards to Donald Trump, and I want to get your thoughts on Donald Trump and the Supreme Court appointments. Right? For me, I just assumed when Donald Trump was running, Jerry, just so you understand, Matt, Jerry and I were both Trump skeptics. It didn't occur to me that Donald Trump would deliver on his promises of appointing the right people to the high courts, or putting the right people in at the executive branch agencies, or doing what he said he was going to do on regulation. I know, Jerry, you agree with me on that.
No other Republican president would have stuck by Kavanaugh.
Yeah.
And he did. Trump decided, this is my guy. We're going forward with Kavanaugh. I think any other Republican would have collapsed. But also, just tangentially, I think that even the tax cut battle, any other president would have collapsed on that with the media. And I think it was Trump who kept the Republicans in Congress together, which is why we had that historic tax cut. Trump proved himself to be someone who would dig in and fight. And that's why even today his supporters are still supporters.
Deal and I write about this in the book that you guys were kind to plug, The Desecrators. I think one chapter is entitled "Trump Never Wavered," and what we go through is this thing that I wasn't a Trump skeptic as much as I was uncertain, as I have become cynical about whether Republicans, when they become the president, are they really going to do these things? So
exactly,
we really don't do the things. If you look at a standard stump speech or a standard CPAC speech of a major national Republican, they have no intention of doing these things.
Yes.
They know they have to say that we want to shut down the IRS. They know we have to say that we are going to outlaw abortion and overturn Roe v. Wade. They know we have to say that, you should be able to have prayer in school. Like, they know you have to say these things, but I've sat around these tables. I've had some of these jobs. They have no intention of doing it. They have no intention of fighting for these things. It's all like, we must say these things. And Trump, I spent a lot of time with him, a fair amount of time with him before he announced, and I was always amazed. I was gobsmacked at like how many questions he would ask me. And I was like, well, he's just having me on. He's making me try to feel important, but he would ask such great follow-up questions. And what he was doing, he was taking a crash course in building that building, and the building he was building was becoming the president. And he needed to know who the people were he needed to get on his side. What do you need to do to get that building built? So that when he knew, because he's smart, when he figured out what you had to do to build that building, he wanted it to be the most beautiful building in the world. So when he committed to being a pro-life guy, he was going to be the best pro-lifer ever. Matter of fact, he would yell at the other pro-lifers, and this is what he would say, guys, and this is really important for us. He would say, you guys have been talking about this for like 50 years. Don't you want to get it done?
Yes.
Let's get the building built. And that's how he thinks.
When I knew that Trump was going to be a man that did what he said, was when he followed through and moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And I remember former Senator, was it Flake from Arizona?
I think so.
Perfectly named.
Yeah. Anyway, so he got on one of the CNN type shows and actually said the quiet part out loud and said, "Look, I know he campaigned on this, but you can't do what you campaigned on." And I thought, "Oh my goodness."
Remember
And
Obamacare?
Yes.
Obamacare? These people, these idiots talked about repealing Obamacare for like a decade or something, and then the ball comes to them. Can you imagine? I want to be in the Super Bowl. God, put me in the Super Bowl. God, please put me in the end zone. Please make me open in the end zone. Let the quarterback see me. Let him throw it to me. The ball is coming to them. It's going to be the winner. And not that they drop it. They put their hands to their side and let the ball hit them in the chest because they decide, I know I said I was going to repeal it, but we're not going to repeal it. I think that was a real eye opener for me. And we've seen that on every single issue. I want to ask you two guys a question.
Sure.
Besides overturning Roe v. Wade and besides moving the embassy, right? And think about one thing that besides cutting taxes, think about
those are three big things, Matt.
Yeah, but this is what all Republicans do when they get power is they trim taxes a bit. We don't really do anything major. We trim taxes a little bit. We try to pick conservatives for the Supreme Court, but it's 50-50. They're all 50-50. Even Reagan was 50-50. Name something else in the last 50 years that's like Roe v. Wade, which is a complete and utter victory for what we've been preaching. I can't think of it.
Well, I mean, the only thing that approaches it is this regulatory decision on the major questions issue, right? The West Virginia.
Yes, I agree. Okay, so what I should have said, besides what we've learned in the last 10 days.
Oh yeah.
When have we ever been here before? We've never been here.
That's exactly it. It's funny because I was at a meeting on Wednesday, and someone was talking about any one of these decisions, right? Whether it's the gun case in New York. What was that, Jerry?
I just said it's monumental.
Yeah. Whether it's the gun case, whether it's Dobbs, whether it's Matt, before you came on, we were spending a lot of time talking about the Kennedy versus Bremerton decision, or this, and now this West Virginia versus EPA, which didn't go as far as I would have wanted it to go.
That's my question, Andrew, to you is that's kind of the one in all candor I might care the most about, but I understand the least. I don't exactly know how far it goes.
Well, no, I mean, listen, it doesn't overturn this concept of what's called Chevron deference, right? Agencies are accorded a tremendous amount of leeway in how they interpret the law. As I've been saying, right? Congress passes the Clean Water Act that says you can't pollute a navigable waterway. We all know what a navigable waterway is, right? It's the Cuyahoga River, which caught on fire, which is part of the reason why the Clean Water Act was passed, or the Hudson River, or the Potomac, or the Chesapeake, or whatever. We know that those are navigable waters. EPA cannot turn a dry patch of desert sand in the high desert of Nevada into a navigable water of the United States. That's essentially what Chevron deference is all about. They've done this. It doesn't go and throw that out, right? The way it is that courts for the last 45 years have said whatever the agency says is they're given deference in that interpretation. What the court has come back and said is, okay, we're not going to throw out deference entirely, but it's this major questions doctrine, right? So for instance, if Congress says OSHA has the power to regulate sanitary workplaces, right? You want to have a clean workplace, you can't use that to create a massive vaccine mandate, right? That's not the way this works. You can't shoehorn a major new regulation that has sweeping powers and economic impact into something so small and only tangentially related. So if the Clean Air Act says you can't regulate, the Clean Air Act says you regulate pollution, air pollution, you can't completely redo the entire power grid and the power economy in America.
But let me bring up one corollary to this. And in the stage of my life when I worked with a lot of major corporations and entrepreneurs, one of the problems with Chevron was that there's really no due process. So the smaller agency, quote unquote, independent agency, it's kind of misnomer, right? Decides, okay, so the puddle in your driveway is a navigable waterway, is a wetland. And then the only place you can appeal is to like the guys that sit in the next cubicle at the same independent agency. So it's like, it's kind of like the pardon process at DOJ when you have to go to the people that tortured you with prosecution to then see if you can be, get approved to get a pardon, which you never get approved to get because they hate you. This is part of this, there's no due process for small business people.
This was the brilliance and the beauty. This is where I knew that things were going to really look up under Donald Trump, right? Is that the two very first things that he did when he came into office, or among the two that very first week, among the executive orders, was one, an executive order on transparency and accountability on what our friend Wayne Cruz at CEI calls regulatory dark matter. The things that aren't regulations, but have the force of regulations, interpretation and guidance documents. But the other thing that he did was he got at this issue of the administrative law process and wanted to make that process more transparent and accountable. And what happens when Joe Biden is elected? Those two executive orders are out literally again within the first week. You talk about unprecedented. Sorry, go ahead.
I was saying that's the great irony in all of this. And if we had a true independent news media, this would be the conversation. And that is the party that is concerned about voter suppression and threats to democracy and insurrection and all the rest of it. This is the party that wants to regulate in secret, wants to delegitimize the courts, wants to undo the Electoral College, wants to be untethered from the Constitution. And it's, again, I know this is cliche, but it's the truth. If you want to know what the Democrats or the progressives are up to, just listen to what they're accusing us of doing.
Yeah,
interesting.
So Matt, let's turn our attention. Speaking of accusing the Democrats, accusing us of what they're doing, we want to talk about January 6th and the craziness of this week. Can I
just say something real quick to Matt about this? So Ms. Hutchinson's giving her testimony, and I got to watch it because I go on the radio and I got to comment on these things and I got to pretend I'm intelligent. The Lord gave me lots of talents. I'm still waiting for the intelligence to kick in, but I'm listening to her testimony, and and repeat. I shut it off and I call Andrew. I'm like, "Did you hear this? This is not right." I'm sitting in my house in Maryland, and I know what she's saying isn't true because there's no way the president, by the way, have you seen The Beast? There's no way the president is lunging over a bulletproof barrier and seats to go to grab the steering wheel. And there's no way that Donald Trump, and God bless him, a 76-year-old man who's a little overweight, is going for the throat of a Secret Service person, and again, it immediately smacked of being untrue. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Matt, and I wanted to just get it because when I was originally talking to the folks at ACU about having you on, we were originally going to have you on right after the second of the primetime hearings, which wound up not happening. So now we're a week away. We had this emergency J6 hearing, or last minute sudden J6 hearing. I want to get your thoughts on this process and where they are and where we're going, and how it's playing out outside of the bubble of DC.
First of all, let me just say we started a First Amendment fund as a function of our C3. We've raised over $1 million from people across the country. We've spent that money to help the lesser known victims. By the way, Cassidy Hutchinson applied to get her legal fees paid for. In our good judgment, we said no.
Wow.
We haven't given money to everybody who's asked. We asked the lawyers to take a haircut. Some of these lawyers don't like that, which I understand. Yeah. But this is about saving the country and saving the reputations of these people who did nothing wrong. And then we have established J6 Facts on Twitter, so you should all follow that. And this has been, we've hired a small group of experts to push back. We've broken so many stories. We broke the story that the Biden administration, like the same week they're saying that these Capitol Hill cops were being attacked by Trump supporters, they dropped charges against 5 Antifa/BLM violent rioters who literally physically attacked cops. One of them threw a rock at a cop's head. The other one took a big metal shield and tried to go at a cop's neck. You read the facts of what the charges that were dropped, and they said, in the interests of justice, we're dropping these charges. At the very same time, Liz Cheney is up on this stupid, illegitimate committee talking about like any cop that is attacked. By the way, No cops were killed by the crowd on J6. These are things we don't know. Liz Cheney keeps saying 5 people were killed by this crowd. Everybody associated, family members, superiors of these cops, that's all been debunked. They continue to say things that are untrue. And that's why we established the Twitter handle, because everybody can have their opinion on Donald Trump. That's legal. And everybody can have their opinion on J6. That's legal. What you can't do is corruptly use your congressional power to push lies and destroy people's lives. And Republicans always sit on the sidelines when one of our colleagues and friends comes under attack, because we all have corporate relationships, and we all know that DOJ will come after us next. And Mercy and I just said, screw it. We've got to stop having all of our wounded soldiers die on the field because we won't apply any first aid.
Well, and
it's interesting. I'm sorry, Andrew, just real quick.
Yeah, please.
I know this from my experience, but also with talking with others who have radio shows or who are involved in different media outlets. They've been told, be mindful how you talk about J6.
Oh, yes.
Be mindful about this. In some instances, I know that folks have been told not to talk about it, to stay clear of this topic. And so this pressure, you're absolutely right. This kind of corporate cancellation. If you say something that's truthful, you say it in a spirit of wanting to shed a light, not heat. If you articulate it peacefully, you can still lose your livelihood. It's insane what's happening. Yeah.
Oh, no, absolutely. And by the way, I lost clients associated with J6. I didn't go to the Capitol. I didn't go to the Ellipse. I sat in my home office because, quite honest, I think any common sense American could have looked at the emotion and drama and outrage. Quite frankly, I felt outrage at the voter fraud. I was knee deep in it in Nevada trying to expose it.
I remember. That's right.
But I also knew at that point, it was the denouement. It was coming to an end, and I didn't want to be part of something where I think there was going to be a lot of anger and emotion. I just didn't see the good that was going to come out of it. And so I decided not to go. I made a personal judgment. I still had people call me the next day and fire me because they felt like somehow I was an instigator. And I'm like, this whole idea that you're a domestic terrorist or an insurrectionist or whatever, because you have my views, I call bullshit on that.
But Matt, let me ask you this, right? Because I mean, not to revisit the allegations of the 2020 election, or even right now revisit the allegations of the 2016 election. But don't we have a real problem in America where things have become so complicated and our election system has become so complicated? We have 330 million Americans out there and hundreds of millions, voting. Don't we have a real problem in the timeline between when the election happens and when the elections have to be certified? I mean, talk a little bit about that.
It's a joke. It's a lie. Yeah. We act like there's some kind of process or due process to adjudicate fraud, certainly in presidential elections. Let's just set the table. You guys know this. But basically, the House of Representatives have for 150 years stolen elections left and right. The majority says, it's a tight election for this congressional race. We're going to have a vote and say the Democrat won. And the Democrats have done that over and over and over and over again. And nobody says that is undermining democracy. It's the way the House has its rules. And basically, my argument to Mike Pence and to people like Mike Lee, who are great friends of mine, and Mike Lee was looking for every conceivable way to get involved in this because he knew the fraud was real. But the problem with the Mike Pence defense on all this is that literally, if you have the evidence that they can steal a presidential election through fraud, if you don't take that up during the certification process in Congress, that means it is a license to steal every presidential election. And let me just tell you guys something.
Please.
If you will burn down our cities and kill cops and have 24 people dead after Antifa and BLM riots, and you will do that, and you will be the vice president of the United States and bail those criminals out of jail, what is a little voter fraud? This is a chip shot. This is a 9-iron compared to the other things they're doing, these outrageous crimes that they're committing.
And the irony, again, just real quick, Andrew, and that is, and again, because I'm in Maryland, I remember Jamie Raskin going to the floor in January 2017 and protesting the electors and wanting and pushing back. I remember Hillary Clinton hiring in 2016, gobs of attorneys in various states to see about resetting or switching out electors.
How about the pressure campaign that she paid for,
right,
to try to make electors fearful of voting for Donald Trump?
Listen,
exactly right.
You know something? All I know is I was an elector. I wasn't even an elector. Had John McCain won Maryland, I would have been an elector for John McCain in Maryland. I was getting emails that was 2008. I was getting emails 12 years later urging me to not vote for Donald Trump.
Wow.
You know, I mean, it's clearly someone had found my name on a list somewhere.
But look, you have this question where the strict constructionist like Mike Lee, who I love and respect, and he's my go-to guy. But his point was we needed a controversy at the state level. But you had the same problem at the state level, which is there wasn't any time to try to look. Bush v. Gore in Florida was very unique, and in our imperfect timeline that you bring up, Andrew, that you could do something there because that was more of a question of just a very close result. But when it comes to these thousands and thousands of voter fraud examples, let me just repeat it in Nevada.
Go ahead.
Hundreds of thousands of mail-in ballots are sent to people more than once. They know that there is tens of thousands of people that should have been taken off the rolls. They apply to take them off the rolls the day after the statutory deadline. So the weak Republican Secretary of State says, well, you can't take the people off the rolls because you waited too late to ask, on purpose, by the way.
Yeah.
And so all the criminals and all the people who shouldn't be on the rolls are put back on. They then put the ballots out. This is all public information. The unions and the Democrats track all those ballots. They know no one's voting on those ballots. Lots of those ballots, thousands, were returned. People had people vote for them from previous addresses under their name, and they couldn't vote on election day, or they had to cast provisional. And here's the king daddy of it all in Nevada, and no one talks about Nevada. Hundreds of thousands of mail-in ballots go through a signature checking machine called the Agilis machine.
Yes.
Do you know what that machine did? It said it checked the signatures, but no ballots were kicked out.
Wow.
And Adam Laxalt believes that it could have been up to 400,000 ballots. 25% of them, 100,000 of them, should have been kicked out and been adjudicated by hand. That would be like the normal thing, 25% at a minimum. When it's like 1% that gets kicked out, that issue alone, the fake checking of signatures digitally, which they didn't check, an X could have marked the spot. And just to put a finer point on it, a journalist did this during the presidential campaign. He voted legally 9 times with the concurrence of that person who got the mail-in ballot. Wow. And they developed a way to see if the machines were checking the signatures by basically not signing the proper name.
Yeah.
They all but one were accepted in the count. It didn't matter what you put in the signature block. You could have put an X. You could have put a stamp of Mickey Mouse. It got counted. And if they all knew that, because they run Clark County, if the Democrats knew that anything they did on that signature line, and they knew that the envelope of the address would be thrown away and you just have the ballot and it's an anonymous ballot, that is a license to steal the presidency. Now, I don't use that term. I don't know how widespread the fraud is because we really can't know. But they know that there's nothing under our system we can do unless we do the tough thing and say, actually, we're going to put a pause on the results until we know the extent of these crimes. And I think that's hard for Republicans to do.
100%.
But what happens if we don't do it?
Let me ask you a question, because
hold on, Jerry. I just want to really quickly ask Matt a question about this. No, good. Something. Go ahead.
By the way, nobody knows that, Andrew. What I just explained to you, nobody really knows. We did a crappy job of making people understand. We actually did have the evidence. It was judges who were scared to death to overturn the result in Nevada because they really did think they were going to start a whole new series of riots.
Matt, was one of the sorry, go ahead, Jerry.
Real quick. So again, this is something Andrew and I have talked about before, and that is because during this process, Andrew and I were quite clear about what was happening in Pennsylvania, what was happening elsewhere. And again, we know later from the Time magazine piece that corporations, social media, Democrats, and folks in the mainstream media were fortifying the election. right? They admitted to this afterward. And that was kind of like the 60,000 foot, how they were setting it up.
Do you know what that word means, Jerry?
Tell me.
No. It's really important for us to understand what that.
Well,
it
was a setup.
Word that the Chamber of Commerce was, maybe played the biggest role in. It was, they knew that once they got the illegal ballot in that box,
right,
that fortifying meant reduce the chances that it could be questioned.
Okay.
In other words, make legal illegal voting.
So, and again, they themselves made this public with that magazine article. But here's the question, and it's something Andrew and I, because as this was happening, Andrew and I are having our podcast, or on the radio, and I kept on saying, look, we have until, I think it was December 14th, even before January 6th, when the states certified their elections. That really was the drop dead date in terms of recourse, because once the state certified, then the judge could, and then you challenge, then a judge could simply say, well, yeah, it's hinky, but the deadline is passed. And so, in terms of election reform moving forward, should we change the dates for certification in the states? Are there things that we can do to police against fraud in the future?
Okay, let me jump in here.
Go for it.
So the first problem is, it won't matter what we do in terms of time if the judges and our elected representatives are really too scared to have a conversation about big cities that are run mostly by Black socialists. And when you start questioning voting, you have this hearkening to our history, when it is legitimately true that mostly Democrats, but both parties are guilty of trying to prevent Blacks from voting legally. And that is a hard, difficult topic. And most Republicans do not want to have it.
Sure.
But the fact is, today's illegal behavior cannot be allowed to happen because of huge moral lapses in our history. And that is the reason why we won't touch this. We don't want to bring up the corruption of Baltimore and Detroit and New York City and Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And that is at the center of this. The reason why there's more fraud, there was always fraud. There's fraud everywhere. There's fraud when you run for Stuco president. But the difference now is that there are no Republicans in any of these cities, in any of these battleground states. There was always a couple before, just enough in New York City that they couldn't just do everything they want. Those people are all gone. It is all run by a very radical arm of the left, and they view Donald Trump as such a threat that they justified everything. And by the way, they don't go to, these are not like faithful people that believe in morality and stuff. They believe in power. And let me tell you, if people think Ron DeSantis is the answer because they're not going to hate him as much, they are wrong.
Well,
they're going to hate anybody.
Question, right? It doesn't matter, right? The same accusations that were levied against Donald Trump are the same accusations that were levied against Mitt Romney, the same accusations that were,
well, the intensity was different. But to Matt's point, whoever,
because we didn't like him either. I get that.
No, but I mean, right. They accused McCain of being unfit for office because of his anger. They accused Mitt Romney of murdering people. I mean, it was
being a
ridiculous.
misogynist.
But the fact is that you're 100% right, and I caution my friends about this, and that is, whoever the nominee is, they are going to be labeled as racist, as insurrectionist, as un-American, as illegitimate. And again, that's what they did in 2000. It's the 2016 model. They're going to use that now on everything moving forward.
And then one of the reasons I love Trump so much and always will is he said, "And your mother." They said, "Well, you did this thing in your background," and he went right back in their face and he said, "You did it twice." And on the playground, we used to say, "Your mother wears combat boots."
Yes.
We all remember the phrases. There was the guy that knew how to handle the bully. And Trump knows how to handle the left-wing bully. He doesn't apologize, and he's made oodles of mistakes. And by the way, when you get to know him, he admits it. Like, he doesn't act like he's any kind of perfect guy. He is a regular guy, and he knows he's made mistakes. The difference is that he is not going to spend his time talking about the mistakes they want him to talk about so that he marginalizes his ability to be successful. They don't do that. Do you think Hillary Clinton has ever had to account for the fact that she just attacked Clarence Thomas on the court, or the fact that she tried to delegitimize the 2016 results with this lie that she concocted about Russian collusion, which they knew was a lie from the very beginning? Do you think she ever apologizes or held on? No, she just talks about the next thing. And that's what Trump is trying to teach us.
Or the fact that her two top aides were double dipping at the State Department, were double dipping with a consulting
I forget it.
firm.
I forget all this.
That was funding the Clinton Foundation, Matt. Because I was going to ask you about. And
by the way, the Clinton Foundation. Just take 10 seconds,
please.
What did 99% of the money that they all raised went into the pockets of their friends? It was the least charitable charity in the history of mankind.
100%, right? I mean, that's exactly it. It's Haiti is still a horrible place to live. Despite the Clinton Foundation supposedly spending scads of money there. No, that's exactly it. Let me turn our attention before we let you go. I know our time is limited. July 4th is coming up, Independence Day. We just had this story of Cornell University of them removing the bust of Lincoln and the copy of the Gettysburg Address from the library. I'm going to pull up the book again. Your book is The Desecrators. You wrote it with Diehl Hudson. You've got an introduction, a forward by someone named Mercedes Schlapp. I don't know who that is. She may be related to you. I don't know. But I want you to sort of talk about the book and where we are as a nation going into this July 4th holiday.
Yeah, and I talk about this in the last chapter, kind of like practical things.
Yeah.
And as a father of 5 girls, I think Mercy and I have gotten very practical in trying to help our kids to be proud of their country. It's little things, guys. I got my flag up in front of my house. And it's a real center point. And I think we got to get back to this idea of loving our country. By the way, warts and all, and as a Republican, and I probably beat up the Republican Party more than most Republicans, but I'm really proud to be part of the party that was created to end slavery. Yes. How did we get ourselves into a defensive position when it comes to questions of race? I refuse to be in that position. I've never owned a slave. I've never advocated for second-class rights for people of color. And so I'm not going to apologize.
Hold on, Matt. And you also haven't advocated for policies that have systemically over the last half century destroyed the communities of color in America.
That's right. And cynically, will make the charge with a straight face that I think the left actually doesn't want the lives of people of color and Black people to improve, because it's kind of good the way it's working out for them. How could every one of these cities, every single one is failing so spectacularly? And if the 3 of us were given, $25 billion in a year, how come we could fix things so much quicker? And with all of the money they have, they can't do anything.
Well, it gets down to what you were talking about earlier, right? Which is this idea of, oh my God, we're actually going to solve these problems. We're actually going to take steps to do what we campaigned on. Go ahead, Matt. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say to Matt's point here, and this is something that's different from the political debate from maybe a generation ago, and that is people look. C.S. Lewis said that the proof of God is that innate in all of us is this desire to know the truth, and there's no culture where the man or woman running away from battle is lauded. It's always valor is the thing celebrated. This idea, the concept of fairness is across this culture. So there are things in us that prove that God exists, that there's divine. And I think that in America over the last 40 years, so many people have abandoned true faith. And so politics has become their dogma. And that's why, to your point, Brandon Scott, mayor of Baltimore City, cannot fix Baltimore City because he's blinded by his dogma. He cannot engage in ideas outside of his political faith. And that's part of the problem with our public discourse.
But there's something else you're missing.
Yeah.
Which is, if you don't love the country,
yeah, of course.
and you're not honored to have been born an American, and when you're Michelle Obama and you say, this is the most telling thing I think I've ever heard a famous person say.
Yes.
For the first time, I can actually be proud of being an American, or something to that effect.
Yes.
Right.
That we need to listen to those words. When a politician says they want to transform America, it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
It means you think it's crappy. And I don't think it's crappy. And I think the Republican Party has a very proud, proud accomplishments, historical accomplishments on race. I will not be lectured to by any Democrat on race. I don't care what their color is. And we've got to get out of this defensive posture when it comes to race. And if that means we have to learn more and talk to more people and listen more, I'm all for it. Yeah. But we are destroying this country. We are teaching the next generation to hate this country. If this country's so flippin' terrible, why is everybody coming on the open southern border to be here? It's because they all know it's the greatest place to be on the face of the earth. But it won't be much longer if these policies, which Biden is parroting because he's not in his right mind, and his wife and his son are manipulating him in a gross display of power, they're literally destroying the country. And the saddest thing of all is I didn't think you could destroy America this fast. And the 18 months or whatever it's been of Joe Biden, the one thing I've talked to the former president about is we have slipped so bad. You really have to ask yourself, how do we get out of these holes?
Sure.
Well, again, this last court session is good news.
Very good news.
I also think that Doug Schoen, who, of course, is a Democratic consultant, was a Clinton consultant. And I know Doug a little bit. I worked with him. He's a good guy.
Great guy.
He's a good guy. Anyway, he had a piece yesterday or this week in the New York Post warning Democrats that if you continue down this road of being so radical and un-American, he didn't say un-American, but radical. There is, again, maybe our best asset is that they're going to become so radical that the Democratic Party is going to have to reinvent itself. There are moderates left in the party. I mean, many have gone and become, independents and this sort of thing.
And they're going to vote our way in November. Yes, I mean, they're not going to stand with their party.
Yeah, but I think that if the Democratic Party keeps on going this way and voices like yours, Matt, continue, I think that the Democratic Party could become a fringe party in the future. I'll end on this. I have an idea for a podcast for you.
What is that?
It should be. You've been.
I thought it was going to be Angry Man in a Pink Shirt.
No. You've just been slapped.
You know what?
Okay, slapped.
So my staff is listening to you because that is literally the name of our podcast.
No kidding. Is it really?
A derivation. A derivation of it.
That's so funny. Right. Hey, Matt, Monday is Independence Day. Not that you need to tell us specifically what your plans are. You have any fun plans? What's your go-to at a 4th of July picnic or barbecue?
Okay, so we go out to the mountains of Virginia. We escape the city. We have a little place out there in the mountains, a humble little place, which we love. And we'll hang out with friends and we watch fireworks from afar because we are kind of in a remote area. We'll hang out. As a family, we'll cook all the staples, and what we do more than anything else. I have a wonderful bowl that I purchased because I like to go buy old stuff. I say I am old stuff, so I like to buy old stuff.
Sure,
but I have a wonderful bowl of all the great Virginia heroes and politicians who are now all canceled. And we turn the bowl because all their images are on this beautiful bowl, and we turn the bowl and we read about those men of history, these heroes, and who are all canceled, and we learn about them. And so what I'm trying to do for my kids is make them understand when they're on TikTok or whatever else that I can't control, unfortunately, they are learning all the wrong lessons, and we're learning to be countercultural. Everything you hear is wrong. Don't listen.
Matt, how you talk to your 5 girls? I have 5 children as well, 4 girls, 1 boy. The youngest is a boy, but I tell them the same thing. You're being filled up with misinformation. So let's make sure that we have opportunities to get good information. That's what the dinner table's for, right?
Great.
And that's and
Can I tell you the other thing, Jerry? That's great about our place out there, which we've replicated in our Alexandria home. The TV is only to watch a movie.
There you
go.
It
never gets turned on. Matter of fact, we didn't even get cable out there because I don't want to hear it anymore.
Yeah,
sure.
You're smart.
I get it. Well, Matt, listen, happy Independence Day to you and yours. Thank you so very much for joining us today. We got to get you back at some point soon.
Matt,
awesome, guys. It's always great to be with both of you. And I want to just note for the record that Jerry was quoting a great Protestant theologian in this show. I just want to make that clear.
That's good. And now it's time for the bottom line.
The bottom line.
So, wow. And I know, Jerry, I know you got to get off to go to work, but what a great conversation there. Oh, and remind me before we go, I want to say something, but go ahead.
No, again, Matt Schlapp is courageous.
Yes.
He has the courage of his convictions. And the thing is, too, is I think it's very dangerous. And you know this to be true, that there are certain conversations or topics or positions that if you take those positions, you're literally putting your livelihood, your family's livelihood in jeopardy. You know, and again, I think about this too. When the baseball controversy, last year's All-Star game issue came up.
Oh yeah,
and everyone was saying that the Georgia voting laws were Jim Crow to voter suppression, and if you took the opposite position, there was a lot of pushback, and it turns out that election was the freest, most open, most participatory in, I think, Georgia's history. Probably. And everyone was wrong. And in spite of the left, the progressives being wrong, baseball being wrong about this, many people still were canceled and banned. And that's scary to me.
And there's no accountability for those who are predicting doom and gloom, as you pointed out with the J6 hearing this week and Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony. Right? Where is the accountability with the Wall Street Journal coming back, or the David Frenches of the world? We didn't even get it. I wanted to ask him about Mick Mulvaney. You know, talking about the cocktail circuit. Jerry, how are you going to be celebrating July 4th?
Well, and look, we do the same thing every year. July 4th for us really is similar to what Matt had said. There have been times when we've gone down to the archives and and they have a reading of the Declaration of Independence, and we've done that before. But we'll have a barbecue or we'll grill out with the family. We do historic readings.
Good.
So we'll pick out something and we'll read it over dinner. But it's low key. Monday though, we will go see fireworks for the first time in 2 years.
Wow. I am. I will at some point this weekend watch 1776.
Yes. One plug for myself,
please.
At Real Clear Books right now. Go to Real Clear Books today. I have a list of the most patriotic movies.
By the way, I am very much not happy about the. One of the things I wanted to talk about Larry O'Connor was the sort of the propensity to gender flip on Broadway. The idea is you take roles and traditional roles that have been one gender and you flip them around for somebody else. The big example right now is this musical Company by Stephen Sondheim, where the character of Robert or Bobby is now Bobby with an I, a woman. And interestingly enough, Company has folded, or not has folded. It is going to be ceasing performances in July. It's not running nearly as long as they had hoped. There is a production of 1776 that is going to be coming to Broadway, where all of the characters are flipped, and it's racially diverse.
Is it a wokeism type thing?
Well, to flip the genders, 100%. Yes.
So you know, it's interesting. Just to comment on this. You know, the Buzz Lightyear, has flopped.
Yes,
and you know, Christian Toto has written about this on Hollywood and Toto, but not just there. Else. The American people, or a significant remnant, remain that will not engage in this kind of woke reinterpretation of art and matter.
This is why Top Gun is so successful. The Top Gun Maverick is so successful.
And here's the thing about Top Gun, for those who didn't see it yet. Top Gun is not anti-woke.
No,
it's just not woke.
Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah, but of course, exactly, Jerry, by definition, in America in 2022, if you're not actively anti-racist, it means you're racist. So it's, you know, hey, I want to say something. I want to take a moment of personal privilege here. Because there was a death in my orbit in the last week. I got woken up on Sunday from a message, and then I had a phone call with my good friend John Justice.
Who has been on the podcast,
and John also, that's right. Yeah. John did Andrew and Jerry Save the World. I've known John for probably 12 years. And for most of those 12 years, I was doing every Monday morning, I do a hit now on Twin Cities News Talk. But when John was on with this gentleman, Andrew Lee, in Tucson, I would do it with them. Then Drew went off to the Twin Cities and John stayed behind. Anyway, so John called me up. John had been in the hospital recovering from major surgery. And he said, "You're not going to believe this, but Andrew Lee, died on Saturday. Very, very sudden situation, completely unexpected." And
a young man.
Yeah. I mean, yes, young in his 50s, like Jerry and I are, and it caught me completely unawares. And I've had some days to sort of process this, and I just want to say, to Drew and his family, and both his wife and family that way, but also to his extended radio family, my heart goes out to all of you. My condolences. Safe home, Drew. Godspeed to you, my friend. The world is a dimmer place without you in it. As I said, Jerry and I are both doing radio this weekend. Jerry, you're on Sunday.
The Jerry Rogers Show on Sunday, and I haven't been told yet, but I'm gonna probably be on a couple of nights next week as well.
Good.
The Jerry Rogers Show at night over on WBAL.
I'm doing my morning show at night. So Greaseman reference. I am going to be on WMAL next week. There may be some more days.
That's right.
But I'm going to be on WMAL, which is a Washington D.C. station. You can get it on your phone. You can get it online. It streams. But I will be in Monday through Friday. So Monday, July 4th through Friday, July 8th, 5 a.m. to 9 a.m. So
early.
Yes. Listen, morning drive.
So I'll be calling you at 2:00 in the afternoon to talk about some controversy, and you'll be asleep.
Well, no, but see, that's just it, Jerry. I can't, right? Because if I want to make sure that I can go to bed sometime between 8 and 9 p.m., because I'm going to be getting up at 3:30 in the morning, I actually can't take a nap in the afternoon.
And you're the type who probably needs 8 hours.
Oh, it's so funny. I had this conversation with somebody the other day. I need a good 7.5 hours. Right, 7.5.
7.5.
Yeah, I know.
So I went to bed last night. I did the late show yesterday. Got home around 12:15, and then I'm wired. After doing a radio show, I'm wired. So I come home and I read through emails, and I check out Netflix to see what's going on. And I bet you I fell asleep last night around 2, like
Lord,
2:00. And I was up at 5:30.
But I remember, yes, because Jerry texted me at 5:55 this morning.
Sorry.
No,
did I wake you up?
It's all right. No. I was awake. I'd woken up because I went to bed last night at about 10:30 and was
10:30.
Yeah,
I was on the radio last night at 10:30.
So there's a, but I also been up at 3.
I know, I'm just teasing. I know.
But it's funny because there's a meme out there that says when I was a kid and I used to have to go to bed at 9 p.m. My bedtime was 9 p.m. I couldn't wait until I was a grown up so I could go to bed later at a later time. Turns out that time is 9 p.m. So yes, my wife and I, as we're becoming empty nesters, we're going to start making that inexorable journey towards having dinner at 4:30 in the afternoon.
No, so that's the thing too. Is again, I'll let you go, Andrew, and we'll close it out. But in the summertime, we have dinner. We're like in Spain here. We have dinner like at 8:00 at night.
Yeah, no. Can't do it that way. I can't do it that way. You're of course going to bed later as well, but I don't like eating within several hours of when I'm going to bed. But anyway, it is what it is. Jerry, so what do you want people to do, my friend?
Well, especially after talking with Matt and the kind of courageous steps and positions he's taken, we have to find the truth, plant your feet, and stay firm. God bless you. Stand firm.
Yes. Happy birthday, America.
Yes.
Have a great Independence Day. Everybody, happy 4th of July.
Let's go.
Have a great week, everybody. And listen, Jerry and I need to figure out if and when we're going to record the podcast next week.
Because you'd be so tired.
But maybe what we'll do is we'll do it in person. Maybe we should go to Matt's offices and do it, or someplace up on the hill. But have a great week, everybody. Have fun, and please, by all means, stay safe.